All right, Mike, it's been a while. Thanksgiving, flu's got me down. It's good to see you, my friend.
You too, my friend. It's always
Um,
good to see you.
I remember last time that you mentioned for the next interview segment, you wanted to talk about your comrades who fought for many, an unknown fight at Nong Song in July 1967.
Correct.
Well, take it away, Mike. The floor is yours.
Well, um, we had finished up June with a couple ops. I went on Arizona with Hotel Company. Then I went on Calhoun with Echo Company. Um, Neither op was especially difficult. Contact was light. It was mostly sniper fire. 7th Marines did make significant contact in the Arizona, but we were on the east side of the Arizona. We eventually, in phase one of it, we crossed over the Thuban into the Arizona territory, and it seemed like once we had made the crossing that the enemy just disappeared from the battlefield, and they disengaged from 1-7. And so it was the 1st Battalion, 7th Marine Battalion commander, I believe, had operational control. He called that part of the op off. And then we crossed back over into the west of the Thuban into the Anwal Valley. And our battalion commander thought that the enemy was still in the Anwal area. He thinks that they crossed somewhere during the night, and intelligence had showed that there was a significant enemy presence in the Anwal Valley. So he initiated phase 2 of Operation Arizona, and like phase 1, it was no different than phase 1. No contact, just heat casualties. It was so hot. So eventually that operation got called off and suspended, and we went back to Anwal, and then a week later we went on Calhoun. Calhoun wasn't much more than hoots searching. We just went looking for enemy weapons caches and stuff in the villages in the Anwal area, and nothing, no contact, no nothing, which didn't make anybody unhappy. Then around the 25th, I think it was, somewhere near the end of the month of June, Echo Company was sent up to to Nong Song. And we were there till the 29th. We had a Captain Blessing, who was our CO. He called a briefing to let us know that Fox Company was going to come and relieve us at Nong Song, and that we were then going to go patrolling in Antenna Valley. None of that news made any of us happy. So I think Fox got there around the 30th of July, or I'm sorry, the 30th of June. Could have been the 1st of July, but we left on the 2nd. Fox Company got there, and I spoke to some of my buddies who were with Fox Company. Melvin Newlin, he was in good spirits. Danny Reisberg, Ron Reyes, and Walt Bushlighter, Jimmy Ball. He was actually Melvin Newlin's boss. He was the machine gun team leader. So they arrived, and they got situated on the 3 levels of the hill. Nong Song it has a designation, I believe, of Hill 350. And there were 3 different levels on it. The bottom level, generally the headquarters, company commander stayed there. Then there was a platoon there with him, another platoon on the 2nd level. and then another platoon on the third level. But on the third level, there were 106 recoilless rifles, 281 millimeter mortars. I believe there were 2 4-deuces. Trying to think if there was any. There was a searchlight team up there, an Army searchlight team. They had sent in, and those searchlights were incredible what they could do. So we said goodbye to everybody. I remember as I walked out of the wire, Mel and his gun team consisted, I think, of him, Jim Ball. I think Art was part of that. Art Latinier, I can't pronounce his name very well. And I said goodbye to Danny Reisberg. He had just gotten back from R&R. Well, I'm sorry. He had just gotten back from going home. He re-upped for 6 months his tour. So when you did that, you got to go home for 30 days free leave. And he lived in Michigan, and so he got to go home because he wanted to be there when his 2 daughters were born. He had twins that were expected, and it was going to be a cesarean. The wife knew the date, so he knew he could get there and watch the birth of his 2 children. And so I said hi to him. I hadn't seen him since he left, and we were real tight. I mean, he was, from the day I arrived in Nam, he was the one that picked me up at the headquarters, 2-5 headquarters, and brought me down to the 81s area and took me over to supply, got my 782 gear, and got my rifle and everything like that. He was kind of like my chauffeur. And we became good friends, along with T.L. Cox. And that's when I met Sergeant Wilson as well. But he had just gotten back, and so I said goodbye to him and to Sergeant Mendoza and the rest of the guys. There were a lot of new guys with the 81s. I had been out in the field for the last 2 months with Echo. I hadn't been back at Ann Wallhard. If I wasn't with Echo, I was at a hotel. And so I wasn't at Ann Wall. We had a lot of guys rotate home from the 81 platoon, and one whole section of the 81 mortar platoon, or the one whole gun section of the section that was on top of Nong Song, I didn't know any of them. I met them that night. In the other gun section, I knew because I was good friends with all of them, Danny and Reyes and Bushlighter, and so we left the perimeter. We assembled down near the sandbar of the Thuban River, and then Amtrak crossed and took us across the river. I don't know if you saw the map I sent you, but you can see a road that goes from where the ferry crossing is. They actually had a ferry crossing there, but it was slow and cumbersome and dangerous, and so we had Amtrak this time to do it. Some of the guys from Fox said that when they came there, they crossed in 2 or 3 man boats. So I don't know about that. They said they did it. Some of them came along in Amtrak's as well. But so we made the crossing, and once everybody was across, Captain Blessing had already told the platoon commanders what our mission was, and so he set the platoons out the way he wanted them, and we began patrolling. We walked up around Recon Mountain on the road, and we started into the Antenna Valley, and we were told not to go past a specific place, and we didn't. Well, you got that map. Thank you. We didn't. That one, let me see, the black dot that you see going into Antenna Valley there is where we were not allowed to go. That was our the position where they did not want us to go into. The red area above it is where we set in on the night of the 3rd. And of course, you've got Recon Mountain, the cap unit in Nong Song there. So we went into the valley. Over the period of the day and a half that we were patrolling there, we took sniper fire, heavy at times, which was always my response was always, to hit them. Captain Blessing would tell me hit them, and I'd shoot the fire no matter where it came from. One time it came from the village there in Antenna Valley, and unfortunately I had to hit the village. So you want to save Marines' lives, and so that's what you have to do. That was my job, and so it was just every day. It was just patrolling, and to the east side of Antenna Valley and to the west side, and never across that line, though. And so when the 3rd came along, we did the same things. Just trying. We were actually literally trying to draw the NVA into a fight because they had a Sparrowhawk on call, ready to go. If we got hit hard, then the Sparrowhawk would be inserted into the LZ to help us. And Captain Blessing told us that. He said we were basically sent into the Antenna Valley to initiate a fight. And so that's what we did. But if you were going to initiate a fight, you'd want to go past that dot, get down to where the AT bombs are, AT bomb 4 and 5, which was a big deal in the upcoming Operation Essex. But again, sniper fire, met with 81 mortars. And I don't remember if we had our artillery guys with us. I don't believe we did. And during the day of the 3rd, though, we had been told when we left, we had been told that the entire time we were there, we got information from the people in the village that there was large enemy units there near Nong Song. I don't know that anybody believed it because it didn't change. Nothing changed. We weren't put on heightened alert. I know how it was on Nong Song. I mean, it was skate duty, as everybody, you probably heard it called that. It was skate duty. And when you went up there, it was just like being on R&R. I mean, nothing happened there unless you patrolled into Ninh Binh Valley and never into Antenna Valley. But one day, I think it was the 27th of June, I was searching the mountains to our west with my binoculars, and I actually saw movement of a sizable amount of men. I mean, it's a lot of the forest there was pretty bad. It was jungle basically, but you could see the movement, and I reported it down to Captain Blessing. I was on the top part of the hill. Captain Blessing was below. When Captain McKee came in, he said, "No, I want you down here in the bunker next to me. I don't want you up there." But for now, I was up there. I was actually staying in the bunker that Walt Bushlighter was in. That was the FO bunker, but they didn't have an 81 FO with them when they came. So so I called down to Captain Blessing and went over to Lieutenant Bertolozzi and told him what I saw, and Lieutenant Bertolozzi saw the same thing. And so he got permission from Captain Blessing to open fire with the mortars. The mortars were right there. It was a really easy and good mission to do. And so we hit them. And I don't know how many rounds I shot, 50 to 100 mortar rounds. Didn't shoot any white phosphorus because didn't want to start a fire. That came from down below the bottom of the hill by probably Captain Blessing. But continued to watch that area, but the next 2-3 days never saw anything, nothing at all. And I know that day that we were in Antenna Valley, that enemy forces had been around Nong Song, and artillery was actually called in on it, and on the enemy soldiers, and they broke them up pretty good, which is the word we got from Captain Blessing about the significant amount of NVA around Nong Song. And when the artillery opened up, they scattered them pretty good. And after that point, I don't think anybody thought that it was going to be an issue. They thought that was probably, I'm sure that was probably the only group of NVA there were, and they got hit. They had casualties. They left. Nobody thought anything of it. Some of the guys that were on the top level even stated in the mortar platoon, when I talked to them later, they stated they were not put on heightened alert, because, and they also got the same message from the people in the village below that we got. There's enemy around here. They intend to attack you. And as far as I know, that message never got to somebody, or if it did, they didn't believe it, or they just let it go. I don't know. All I know is I saw a lot of NVA in the jungle there, on the 20, I think it was 27th, and would not surprise me that they tried to reconstitute themselves back in that area. And so that day we heard the fire, and we were concerned. I mean, we were concerned, and because we knew what it was. Captain Blessing told us that they had a large enemy NVA unit had been discovered near Nong Song, and artillery took them under fire, and they scattered. Whether it was part of the same unit that would attack that night on the 3rd, I can only hazard a guess. I would think if they were probably there getting into place to make that attack. But I believe there were some that were already in the villages below us. I don't have any doubt about that. And I think there's a good chance they were in the brush that was underneath us. That was off to the west side of Fulak, or I'm sorry, of Nong Song. And they were actually going to, now I read something about Agent Orange, having Agent Orange in 50-gallon drums up at that, and they were going to spray it and kill the brush that way. But I guess the sprayers didn't work, so they literally brought in from Anwar flamethrowers, and they were going to burn the brush. But it got near dark, so they decided to wait and do it the next morning. I think had they done it, that I don't know how dark it was when when those things arrived, but they would have been better off to do it that night. I mean, I think the enemy was already there. I think they were hiding in the bushes, and I think they were waiting for the rockets and the mortar fire to begin, because the attack was preceded by a mortar and rocket attack. Typical tactics of the NVA when they're hitting a stationary position. And so the 3rd came to an end for us around I guess it was around 1900. We started, Captain Blessing made a decision that we need to set in for the night. And so we picked, I bet it was Atball 3. And we set up our perimeters, and we set in. We ate chow and went to a briefing with Captain Blessing, and he said he was he was really concerned. Captain Blessing was really concerned about what had happened, transpired at Nong Song the day before, and even the 27th when we had when I fired the mortar mission against the enemy when they were in the hills to the west of us. I mean, it was obvious. You could see them. I mean, you didn't need binoculars. So we set in, and somewhere around 2300, I guess it was. Nobody really knew the exact time. Nobody had time to even look at their watches on that hill. But I had just laid down a half an hour before, and Ron had squelched his radio. We didn't want to give away our position through our radios, and he laid down and went right to sleep. And I just kind of laid there looking at the sky and kind of trying to doze off. And all of a sudden, I heard the rocket rounds being fired. They were rockets at first, and then they resorted to 82 millimeter mortars, and our line erupted with incoming. They thought it was meant for us. We were close to Nong Song. We were about 7 clicks away, 6, 7 clicks, and so everybody was preparing for the incoming. And then I looked at Nong Song just as the first rocket hit, and then it was bang, 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 bang. And then silence, and then the mortars. Then the mortars can come in. You can tell the difference between mortars and the rockets. And we knew right then that they were under attack. And so Captain Blessing on the radio, talking to Nong Song, talking to Lieutenant Skuris, and Lieutenant Skuris told him that we got word on the radio that top level of the hill has come under attack. Captain Blessing then got a call from Anwa from headquarters. Colonel Jackson, or Mallet C. Jackson, who was our battalion commander, said, "Get to Nong Song immediately." And that wasn't going to be easy. It was dark out there. I mean, it's pitch dark. There's a road there, but there's no street lights there. And we had one of the most, I think he was the savviest company commanders we ever had. He did not make mistakes. He was the epitome of cautiousness. And he never gave his position away on the radio. Never. You asked for his coordinates, he'd never give it to you. He'd always tell you, find another way to get to get it. I will not broadcast my position over the radio. So they came up with these things called thrust points, and he told the platoon commanders what we were going to do. He said, "We got to get back to Nong Song. They're under attack, and it's obvious to everybody." And he told which platoon commanders to go first. Everybody knew where to go. I went with Captain Blessing, as I usually did, and Captain Blessing took us. We were right next to the road. You probably noticed that. We only needed to go 200 meters. We were on the road. Captain Blessing, like I told you, very cautious, very smart. I mean, he told the lieutenants, our platoon commanders, and he said, we're going to go through the rice paddies. We're not going down that road. We're going to go through the rice paddies, and we're going to come in. We're going to go around the first 300 or 400 meters of that road. And so that's what we did, stumbling through the rice paddies, falling. You can see on the map those rice paddies, the villages, stumbling around. And he had a place on the map where he wanted to come out at. And we came out at that position, one platoon at a time. And the guys on Recon Mountain, there was a whole recon unit up on top of Recon Mountain, which is directly across from Nong Song, with night with night vision, and they were watching, and they were watching the valley below, Antenna Valley, and they told Captain Blessing the next day that when you came out of that valley, you came out ahead of an ambush, or ahead of an ambush that was set for you 300 meters back. There were Buku NVA there, and that, to me, that showed me that the NVA had to kind of alter their plans. And they didn't. I'm sure when they decided to attack, they weren't counting on Echo Company being in Antenna Valley, because when Fox Company arrived, their plans were long into progress. We heard it from the villagers that their enemy was planning to attack you. Fox Company heard it, and I didn't hear that till later. That villagers told them that the enemy was going to hit you, and so we avoided a ambush. I should say Captain Blessing did, because he was just a great company commander, and so we got to the river, and then Captain Blessing left 2 platoons behind. He was only going to take 1 platoon. It was nighttime, getting on near 11:30, 23:30, going on 12 o'clock, and didn't have time to move the entire platoon together. He said, we need to get 1 platoon across so we can relieve 1 platoon so they can go to the top of the mountain and help their buddies. And so we made the crossing. Had to get the guy who runs the ferry. I put on the map where the ferry was located. I wrote it in, and we had to be taken across. I got him out of bed, and he took us across. I asked Captain Blessing if I could go with him. I had ulterior motives. And I wanted to get to the top of the hill too, because I had a lot of friends up there. But I crossed with him. By the time we got there, Lieutenant Skouras, who was the acting company commander until Captain Graham could be replaced, he had already taken a group of Marines to the top, or at least trying to get to the top. And he left a lieutenant behind to bring the rest of the Marines who were on the first level up to help. And Echo took care of the bottom. So that's basically what happened. I got there. The lieutenant was about to go to the top of the hill, and I asked him, can I go with you, sir? And I asked Captain Blessing, can I go? He said, what good can you do up there? I said, we have 2 mortars up there. I said, the enemy's leaving the hill, and they were leaving the hill at that time because they were counterattacked by the Marine, and the Marines during that, the counterattack regained control of the hill, whereas the enemy had it before. And said we can hit their routes of egress. If those mortars are operational, we can hit their routes of egress, and that's what I want to do. And so Captain Blessing told me to go ahead. So we went up. By the time I got to the hill, the firing had already slackened off. There wasn't much going on at all. There was illumination still going off. And so we got to the top of the hill, and it was carnage. A lot of time had passed. This is a really brief version of it, but this is my version of it with Echo Company. I'm sure you read the version in the book. It's what these guys went through, and what I saw up there was, it was horrendous. But I went right directly to Sergeant Mendoza, who was the section leader, and he was sitting in his bunker, not touched. And his bunker wasn't touched because the NVA blew the ammunition that was in that 1 mortar round, but it was only illumination round, so it smoked, caused a great deal of smoke. And the enemy didn't see his bunker. His bunker sat on the west end of the hill, right up against it, and the trench work. And so it's the only way you could. It's probably the only bunker that wasn't blown. And he was sitting in there on his cot. I walked in. I said, "Sergeant Mendoza, Sergeant Mendoza," and he looked up at me, and I saw a man in shock. I mean, he's just plain in shock. And I said, "Sergeant Mendoza, where are the guys at?" And I'm talking, of course, about the 81. And he said, "Danny Reisberg's gone, medevac. He's likely dead. His leg was blown off by a rocket. The first rocket that hit took his leg off at the kneecap." He said, "Reyes is dead. Bushlighter is dead." And he said, "I shot Harry Marshall." And Harry had probably, from what he told me later at Anwal that Harry had came through the door to the bunker, and he thought he was an NVA, and he shot him. That's Harry. And he shot Harry in the chest, and we were good buddies too. His daddy was a full bird colonel in the Marine Corps, and he didn't want to be there. He wanted to go to college, but his dad said, "Serve your country first, son." So he went, and he was medevac. He was gone, and I said, "Where are the guns operational?" He said, "I think one of them is, but the enemy blew the gun outside my bunker here. They blew it. I don't think it works." And I said, "Well, I said, I came up here. I was sent up here basically to see if we can't hit the enemy's routes of egress, and we want to do that." I had an idea where they went. They went back the way they came, and which was down the east side of the slope where they came from. And I said, "I believe we can catch these guys down there. They're going to have to go somewhere." And it was later determined that this outfit was part of the 2nd NVA division. So my guess was they were going back to Antenna Valley, and they'd have to cross into Ninbin Valley to get there. And so, I couldn't see anything. It was pitch dark, even with the illumination, and we didn't have any more. There was no 81 illumination left. So we fired for about 45 minutes. Tried to avoid bringing any fire into the villages, because there were 2 villages down below us. A lot of Vietnamese lived down there, and I didn't want to unnecessarily kill these people. They did warn us in advance, and didn't seem like we heeded the warning, but maybe, so I figured that they were going out the same way, and I fired the mortar rounds for about 45 minutes, and then we started getting more choppers coming in, and I stopped, and he said, Sergeant Mendoza pointed down to the helo pad. Nong Song on top looked like a boot. There was a boot that the boot part of it came this way, and then the long part came this way, and the boot part of it was a helipad. We could bring choppers and that in, and they were starting to come in. I believe they had gotten all the wounded out. Nothing you're going to do for the dead. The dead were still there, and they had a row of the dead, and they had another row of the dead unidentified. And Sergeant Mendoza had told me he said that Sergeant Walt Bushlighter was dead. He said he's down there, and he said they can't identify him because he was in my bunker. I always stayed in that bunker when they came. It was the FO's bunker, and the enemy had thrown the satchel charge into the bunker, and it exploded in the bunker, and the bunker collapsed on them, and they were able to dig him out. But Sergeant Mendoza says you can't recognize him by his face. It says he said his face looked like hamburger. So he's down there. If you can identify him, well, I knew him. He had a tattoo, USMC tattoo, bulldog tattoo that was fading on his arm, and he also had a ring that he always wore on his finger. And I went down there and I asked the corpsman, can I look at, I'm trying to identify some of these. It might be one of our 81 mortar guys. He said, go ahead. And so I pulled the first one. I pulled the first one back. He was an Army. First two guys were Army, so they must have been part of that searchlight team. Bushlighter was the third one in line, and I pulled back the poncho, and I mean, I almost wanted to vomit. I mean, it was sick to my stomach. I'd never, in all my time in Vietnam, I'd never seen a man without a face. But so I looked and I saw the tattoo, and he had the ring on, and I said, I believe that's Lance Corporal Walt Bushlighter. And he said, are you sure? I said, I known him for the last 7 months, and he has a USMC tattoo on his arm, and his left arm, and he's got a ring on his right hand. And so he did, and so they wrote it up. The problem was that with that is when you get the Graves registration and you don't have the dog tag, that creates a problem for them, because they see a guy like that and they're saying that this is this guy. I have no way of identifying him. His dog tags ain't with him. His ID is not with him, and so I told him, I just told him, I said, that's him. And he said, don't have his dog tags. I said, they're probably back in the bunker where he was found. I mean, a lot of dog tags were found the day after that attack. And so he marked him, put a tag on his toe, and then marked it and said who he was. And I wanted to go over and look at the dead who had been identified, but I couldn't bring myself to go look at Mel Newlin or Jimmy Ball or Joe or any of the guys that were killed there with Mel Newlin. We called him Pete. Very few people ever called him Mel. I met Mel Newlin in the mess, or in the EM club at Anwa. Every once in a while they would get beer there, and you can go and have a couple beers, or a couple, if you didn't drink, a couple sodas, and we were all sitting at, a bunch of us from 81s, and a friend of mine from golf company was sitting there, and we were all talking. He had a birthday, and on somebody's birthday, we'd go there and we'd all give him our beers, and so he could sit there and drink 10 beers, and so we were talking about birthdays, and he wanted to ask him. He said, "Mo, when's your birthday?" And I said, September 20th, 1948. And oh no, I said September 20th. And from down another table over, down on the end, he goes, "What year?" Somebody yelled, "What year?" And I looked over and I saw the face, and it was Mel Newlin. I said 1948, and he said, "I was born in September 27th, 1948." And he grabbed his beer and he came over and he sat down with us and we talked, and we became friends. I mean, almost right away. I mean, but that was late April, early May, and he went through Operation Union 2, got through Union 2, and of course was killed up on Nong Song. And so I just couldn't look at any more of those, and I went back to Sergeant Mendoza and sat with him in the bunker and tried to talk to him, but he he was not interested in talking. I said, I think I heard that they were sending a relief for you guys on the radio. I said my radio operator picked it up and said that you guys are going to be relieved here or this morning. And he said that would be fine. But he was never the same after that. You know, my dog acting up again always. Let me let him out. Get out of here. Go. Sorry about that, my friend. But so everybody just kind of crashed once the dead were dug out of the bunkers. And an interesting story was about PFC Reyes, his best friend in the 81 Mortar Platoon, helped dig him out of his bunker. That's Ron. And Ron, he swore that when they dug him out, he was breathing, but the corpsman said, no, he's dead. I said, I saw his eyes move. I saw him breathing. I felt him. He had a pulse. And he said he doesn't have a pulse now. And he kept coming back to the poncho and feeling. He said he's still alive. And he swore to the day he left Vietnam that Ron Reyes was alive when they pulled him out. But that's just one of those things that happened that night. And once everybody was once the dead and wounded were medevaced, everybody just kind of crapped out. You know, they were exhausted, and after what they had gone through, it's a wonder to me that they even were able to keep their sanity. Some of that stuff was insane, and Dean Johnson, I think, was Mel's best friend, and so I caught a couple of hours sleep in the hooch with Mendoza, and sun came up, and everybody walked out. Everybody slept in whatever they could find to sleep in. You know, there were no bunkers to go into, so everybody just kind of crapped out where they were, and sun came up, and couldn't believe what we saw. I mean, it was worse. NVA dead all over the hill. NVA dead on the slope of the hill, the plateau where there was fighting, where Mel Newlin worked his machine gun magic, and Jimmy Ball. They were both excellent machine gunners. All those guys were. Every one of these guys were machine gunners were. But Mel, I mean, what Mel did that night, from the stories I was told, his machine gun was always going. They said that he was changing a red hot barrel with his bare hands, trying to get a new barrel on it. And then one of his friends, I think it was Dean, I don't remember, he looked over at the gun position and noticed that, you know, Mel's gun had been silent. And but that morning, it was just, I mean, I don't know. I other than Union 2, I've never seen so many dead enemy soldiers in one place. And of course, the main thing to do on the 4th was to clear the hill of the dead bodies first. So there was a tractor down below on the helipad. It wasn't really a helipad; it was a sandbar, but it extended way from the river to the bottom of Nong Song, under the first level. And there was a tractor there, and they dug a big hole, and then they had 6x going up, and they're throwing the enemy bodies on the back of the truck, and they were taking them down and throwing them in the ditch, and then they just buried them over. And I know that's about, oh, it's been a long time. It's been over 25 years ago. Um, this this organization, I don't remember what the name of it was, but um, the Vietnamese and the Americans worked together to try to identify where dead Americans had been buried, where dead NVA, soldiers had died, and where they were mass buried. And I got to talking to this guy, and I told him about the battle at Nong Song, and I said we buried uh, 40, 40 or 50 bodies down there. I said, I don't remember what the count was, but we buried them, and as far as I know, they could still be there. And so I never heard from him again until about 6 months later. He thanked me and said that they dug it up, and they repatriated the bones back to Hanoi where their families were. So I guess that's something good for the families. I mean, if it was my family, I'd want the same thing. So that's what we did all day. A new mortar section came in. They took of course they don't they had to bring their own guns this time, even though that gun worked. It didn't look like it was in the best order. I think the enemy tried to disable it, but they were unable to. So, and then I just listened to some of the guys that didn't get wounded on the hill with Fox got me, and talking about what Mel Newlin did, and of course Mel would be awarded the Medal of Honor for his actions in that fight, and he was just a great guy. I mean, that's all I can say about him. So I stayed there. Foxtrot, as far as I know, was not being relieved that day. I didn't understand why, but on the morning of, so we worked, everybody worked. We worked all day, getting rid of all the sandbags, and start rebuilding the bunkers. And then the next morning, of course, all night there was a lot, which would be what you would expect. All night they were throwing grenades off the hill. People thought they heard movement, and there were firefights that never happened. They were just our side firing. They heard something, and so the next morning I got a message from my platoon commander over the radio, and he told me he ordered me back to Anwar. I didn't know why. He just said on one of the choppers that's coming from Anwar with supplies, he said, you get on it and come back. And so I got back, and I went into the headquarters shack, and Staff Sergeant Smith was there. And I said, I got a call on the radio that you wanted me to come back, and what's up? And he said, well, I says, I want to take you over to Lieutenant Ezekiel's office, and the gunny's going to be there. And I said, not the gunny. Me and the gunny were like, so we got over there, and the gunny started talking, and he said, the reason we brought you back is we wanted to let you know that Danny Reisberg died this morning of his wounds. And it didn't hit me at first. And I said, what did you say? And I said, he said, Danny Reisberg died this morning of his wounds. And I felt like my stomach was coming up out of my, as I couldn't believe it. The last word we had gotten on him is they stabilized him, but the word got around. They said they couldn't stop his bleeding. Every time they stopped one artery, another artery would burst, and then they said they just lost him on the table. And they said, but the reason we called you back is because we want you, and we know you guys were tight, and we wanted you to go to graves registration in Da Nang and identify his body, because there's they have his name, but there's nothing there to identify him. They didn't have his dog tags. He didn't have his, nobody kept their, their identification in their pockets. And so there's no identification. And um, I just looked at him and I said, why me? And I said, I don't want to do that. I said, I want to remember Danny as he was. I don't want to go there and look at him in a morgue. And he said, well, you guys were tight. We thought that you'd want to. And I said, well, I don't want to. And Gunny goes, well, he said, Lieutenant sat there and didn't say anything. And the Gunny goes, well, I was hoping I could just, use your friendship to get you to go there, but I'm ordering you to go there. And um, so I said, if you're ordering me to go, I'll go. So he said, when do I leave? And he said, in about an hour. He said, there'll be a C-130 coming in from Da Nang. It's going back to Da Nang. And once you get to Da Nang, you have to find where Graves registration is. And, so I went back to my hooch, and Dan Nagan was there, a good friend of mine, and he was one of the ammo leaders of one of the sections, the mortar sections. And I said, I got to go. Danny Reisberg died. And he goes, I know, I heard it. I got to go identify his body. And I didn't want to, but they ordered me to. And he goes, those bastards. And so I started trying to put something. Oh, and they also told me before I left, you don't have, they said, you can, after you're done with it, he said, you don't have to come back till tomorrow. He said, go to the EM club and get drunk there if you want. And you can stay in the transient barracks there. So I told him what he said, and I only have this big bag. I ain't going to be carrying much. And so he gave me a bag he had brought with him from R&R. It was a little a little basketball bag, it looked like. And so I threw some clean clothes into it. And then I went down to the airstrip at Admiral and jumped on a C-130. And we were there 20 minutes later. And I was lost in Da Nang. I mean, I don't know. I didn't know where anything was. And so I just started asking around. And finally, I got a guy to tell me what you need to do. You got to go up here and make a left and then make a right. You'll see a building there and go into that building. It's an Air Force building, and I think they can help you. So I did what he said. I went in, and I said, I'm trying to find mortuary graves registration. And he said, yeah, you come to the right place. Just wait here. And he said, have a seat over there if you'd like. And he got on the phone, and 20 minutes later, guy comes running over or comes in the door and goes to the front. And the guy says, Corporal Harris, your ride is here. So I got up and went with him. We got in a Jeep, and he took me right to Graves registration. And I walked in. I had papers that I had to give to them to sign and bring back. And I had to sign papers there saying that was Danny Reisberg. And went to the front desk, and I said, I'm here to identify Danny Reisberg. And he was eating a sandwich and had it sipping on a Coke. And I thought to myself, but then I realized how hard this guy's job was. Sitting in there with, a bunch of dead American bodies. And that's probably the way he coped. And so I gave him the papers, and he signed them. And I put him back in my bag, and he said, Corporal Reisberg is back here. So we went through a door, we went to the back, and of course it was cold in there. And he said, he's in this bag right here. And he said, you want me to unzip it? I said, yes, would you please? And he unzipped it, and there was the face of my friend. He was lying there dead. He was blue ash in color and gray, and his eyes were open. And But anyways, the guy says, "Is this Danny Reisberg?" And I said, "Yeah, this is Danny." And I said, "Yeah, this is Danny Reisberg. He's a corporal. Do you know his unit? 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, 81 Mortar Platoon." "Okay, that's fine." He said, "You have to sign these papers when you leave. And so follow me this way." I said, "Can I just have a minute or two alone here?" And he said, "Sure, take all the time you want." So I just sat there and I stroked his hair, um, and just looked at him. And I broke down and cried right there because I knew that he had just come back from watching his watching his 2 girls being born, and it wasn't something I'd want to do again. I mean, um, but I zipped him back up and went to the front desk and signed the papers and turned around to leave. And the attendant there, he goes, "Was he your buddy?" I said, "Yeah, he was everything to me when I first got to Vietnam. When I arrived at Anmo, I wouldn't have known anything without him. He taught me everything. The first 20 things you need to learn in Vietnam when you first arrive, he taught. We played cards together, and we were in the 81 Mortar Platoon together. And now he's dead." And he said, "I'm sorry for your friend's loss." And then I left, and then I went outside the door and um, waited for the guy. Said he would come back and pick me up, and so I just waited there and I wept. And about, I guess it was at least an hour later, the guy came back, and I said, "I need to get to the transient barracks." And so he took me over there, and I checked in, and it was getting on 3, 4 o'clock. And I said, "Is there any place I can eat some chow?" And he said, "Yeah, there's a chow hana." He showed me where it was at and told me, and I went and had some chow, and then I found the EM club, and I went over and I I drank. I drank too much, and um, then the next morning I got on a chopper, or I got on a C-126 or C-123, and flew back to Anwa. And then when I got to Anwa, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where Echo Company was. I didn't know if Echo relieved them and Fox went. They didn't know either, so they just said, "You go get on a helicopter and go back to Nong Song." So um, I got on a helicopter, and they landed me on the top level. They had supplies. They were unloading sandbags and food and sea rats and plywood, metal stuff, the metal stuff they put over the bunkers. And I got off, and the place looked different. I mean, it's amazing what those guys had done in 2 days. Some of the bunkers that weren't as bad were already rebuilt. There was a new mortar section there, and forgot who was running that section. But anyways, I got there, and Foxtrot was still there. Echo Company was in Antenna Valley, but they were going to be helicoptered back to Anmois. So I called the 81 platoon in Anmois, and I said, "Echo Company's going to be coming in there either late today or tomorrow." I said, "Do you want me to come back?" And he says, "No, I don't. We don't need you to come back just yet." He says, "Stay there, because there is no FO there with Fox Company, because um, uh, Corporal Spencer is sick. They think he may have malaria, so he couldn't come out there with him." So I stayed there as the 81 FO for Fox Company, and that day we were still clean. Everybody was still cleaning up, and they found a leg, and I'm pretty sure it was Danny Reisberg's leg. There was no doubt in my mind that it was his leg. It was a Caucasian leg, and I knew it was him, or I knew it was his. And Everybody's wondering what to do with it. I said, why don't we bury it? So we took it off the side of the hill at Nong Song, on the west side, and we dug a pretty good sized hole, and then we buried it there, and um, seemed like the right thing to do at the time. Then at nighttime, the Lieutenant Skouras, who was still the CO of Fox Company, was going to be relieved. We heard that he was a new captain coming in, but not yet. He was still down there, and so I submitted, like I always did, I submitted my H&Is, my night defensive fires from my book, because I had places that I normally fire, and one of those places was where the enemy came up, and that was one of the night defensive fires, and so was where I hit the enemy that was in the jungle. But that one I added that day on the July or June the 27th, and so that night the 81 guys came to me. I had gotten the H&Is. I gave them. Normally, I'll only give them a couple, but I think that night I gave them 3 or 4, firing intermittently, 8:30, 9, 9:30, 10, 10:30, 11. Usually you fire them an hour apart, but I wanted to do it a half an hour, and I wanted to put some on the hill around us. And so I did that, and then the guys in the 81 mortar platoon, angry. They were angry. Everybody up there was angry about. They dared the NBA to attack again, and especially the mortar guys, because they knew Reisberg and Reyes and Bushlighter, and their friends came up, and they were up on that hill, and they said, "Look, across from us on the west side, in the mountains, on top, there was a Arvin unit, an Arvin outpost, and everybody believed that the Arvins knew that the enemy was going to attack us there. They believed. They sat up there and watched it. And I mean, I can't prove that. I don't know for sure, but they said, what we want to do when you fire one of your H&Is, he said, let's put 2 rounds up on top of that. And we can say it was enemy mortars. And then once we do that, we'll kick the mortar back around where our H&Is. And I said, I can't do that. I said, you guys trying to get me court-martialed? And I said, he said, they knew. He said, they knew, Mo, they knew. And I said, well, maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but I can't drop any rounds on top of them. I mean, I won't do that. If you want to do that, go ahead, but I won't do it. And they said, well, can you put 2 rounds close to them? And I said, yeah, I can do that. I can put 2 rounds close to them. And I did it. And, that 2 rounds went off. They kicked the gun around. The gun was facing in a different direction into another one of my H&Is. And the lieutenant, platoon commander for Fox Company, came running down, and I know him, but I can't remember his name. And he was on a patrol. We were on a patrol back it was May. I went on patrol with Fox Company, and we got hit by some Arvin. They said they thought we were NBA, so they opened up on us, and there was an investigation because I opened up on them. I thought they were enemy. They looked more like enemy soldiers than NBA to us than we looked like NBA to them. So I hit them, and next thing you know, they're calling AN1 saying we're being mortared by Marines. And it was us, and yeah, we did it because you were shooting at us. And so there was an investigation, and there was no sweat on me. I was told to do it. I put the platoon commander. It was him, the guy that just came over, and he's the one that told me to call in a fire. It was a platoon-sized patrol, and I did. And so we suffered 2 wounds. They were minor. They were literally treated at the BAS. The Arvin suffered 4 or 5 dead and that many wounded. And and then of course they had an investigation, and they called me, and I just told them what I knew. The lieutenant asked me to call and fire on them because they were enemy soldiers, and that's what I did. They said they made a mistake, and they paid for it. And so it was that lieutenant. He came running down, and um, he said, "What's going on?" And he said that Arvin just said that they got mortared. And I said, "Sir, we just fired our H&Is. We didn't shoot any mortars on their hill. We didn't shoot anything at them at all." And he said, "No, sir." The mortar guys, "No, sir. We just fired our H&Is." And of course, we all were kind of grinning. And um, Lieutenant just basically said, "Knock that bullshit off. Don't make me have to come down here again." So I wish there was a way to tell the story of the heroism of the guys that literally fought the battle. I mean, I got there when the enemy was leaving the hill. I knew nothing of the heroism that went on until that book was written. I didn't. That's the first time when I purchased that book. Gosh, I don't know when it had to be 15, 20 years ago. And I read it, and um, I thought to myself, this is an amazing. These were amazing, amazing Marines. They did it the Marine way, and they didn't give up. I mean, overwhelmed by 400 enemy sappers, and I mean, I went back and read that again. I knew you read it, and I read it again, and I said, "My goodness, I forgot all that stuff." But um, my hat goes off to them, because they're all heroes, every one of them.
Well, and to give people an idea of the book you're talking about, I'm going to throw it up real quick here, Mike. But it's called Gunner's Glory, and it is written by Johnny M. Clark, and it covers the history of machine gunners in various wars fought by the Marine Corps, and it honors a lot of these Marines who ultimately gave their life in service to their country. And Melvin Newlin's story is in this book in great detail, and I'm honored. Mike sent me this book, and it is a phenomenal book about machine gunners across generations of Marines who continue to uphold the duty of what a Marine Corps rifleman and a machine gunner does.
Outstanding.
And to continue this, Mike, I mean, you honor your friends, those that are no longer with us at Nong Song, just by telling their story. But there's a website I use anytime that you mention the names of those that died. And I pull this up, but these are the Marines who died at Nong Song, and this is one of the Marines there, Sergeant Tony Ahenzoff.
Hinzog. That's a Hinzog, yeah. I knew him.
And then, of course, we have, as you mentioned, James Edward Ball.
Yeah.
Of course, we have Walter Bushlighter.
Bushlighter.
We have Andrew Curry.
Him I did not know.
Joseph Lonnie Hicks.
I knew Joe Hicks.
We have Art Landon J. I can't say his
Art.
last name either.
I always said Art. I always just called him Art. His last name is Latinier. He was a Latinier to me sounds French, but could be Italian. He was just an overall nice guy. I mean, you actually put the pictures of the three of them up together, Jimmy Ball and him, and who was the other one with him? Was it Joe? But you can go ahead. Wish we had more pictures of these guys.
I know. I've tried to find a lot of them too that you've, outside of the ones that you've sent me, what I find, but sometimes it's kind of difficult. But we have Raymond Lee Hyson.
Yeah, I had a guy call me last year. He lived in California, and he worked with the walking, or the traveling wall. And what they are doing is they do it every Veterans Day. They try to find pictures of all the names. Their goal is to put a face to every name on the wall. And so I was able to give them a lot of pictures. that I had of people I served with, Marines I served with, and corpsmen and who died, and they're on the site now, just because he got a hold of me. I mean, he read something somewhere, I don't remember what it was, and so that would be a phenomenal thing to do, to be able to get a face for every Marine on the wall. But it's going to be a really hard task. I think they said they had a little over 3,000. I think it was
Wow.
3,600. So they got a long way to go.
That they do. And then, continuing this, here's Mel Newlin.
You know,
You've got on the profile, of course, it shows the awards that Marines earn in their service, and we have the Medal of Honor that was posthumously awarded for his actions that night. I know, just reading the book and let alone his citation, I mean, he fought till his last breath. I mean,
yeah,
wounded multiple times by bullets as well as fragmentation, but his gun continued to operate throughout the attack until he no longer could man that position.
And then trying to change that barrel. You really don't know what it's like until you see how hot a machine gun barrel gets. It can get red hot. And he grabbed that thing with his bare hands to take it off and change the barrel. I mean, so he died with hands that were probably scorched. And I mean, it's just, all these guys that I read their accounts, they're just, these guys were the best of the best that night.
Never
I
seen
mean,
one of them.
yeah.
Well, and speaking of Mel, I mean, another well-known machine gunner that earned the Medal of Honor, John Basilone, and
Yeah,
he
John
carried
Basilone.
scalding hot gun that night on Guadalcanal.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that legacy continues, in Vietnam,
Hmm.
Marines in Fallujah carried scalding hot machine guns in their
Yeah,
firefights throughout
yeah,
Afghanistan because
yeah,
they're the best and they're doing what
yeah.
they have to do.
That stuff is what Mel did, is above and beyond the call of duty.
Absolutely, it is.
And not for Marines. They'll do whatever they have to do to protect other Marines and win. And um, he was a great Marine, but he was a great friend to everybody who knew him.
Well, and you've talked highly of Mel for quite some time before that we
Yeah.
decided to do this segment. And then, you've got Ron Reyes.
Ron Reyes, he was from my home state. I think he's buried. I think he's buried in. I think he was from Bakersfield, and I think he's buried in the National Cemetery across from the VA hospital there in Los Angeles.
Wow.
I believe he is. I'm not certain, but
And then lastly, of course, Danny Reisberg.
yeah, Danny Reisberg is an interesting story. Not only my best friend, but 10 years ago, may even been a little. I made contact with his two daughters. They're twin daughters, and what a great conversation I had with them. They didn't know their dad. He was they were probably weren't a month old when he died. He came back from R&R, and 2 or 3 days later he was in the field. So they probably weren't a month old, and somebody had told them about me, and they contacted me by email. How they got my email address, I don't know, and I don't care. But and they said, "Can we talk to you?" I said, "Oh, I'd love to talk to the both of you." And so we talked for hour and a half. I mean, we just talked. They wanted to know everything about their dad, and so I told them, I told them what I knew. Told him he was a great man, and he was a hero. I mean, he was the gunner of the one of the gunners on the hill that night. He was the corporal, and he would have been the Sergeant Mendoza was the leader. He was the squad leader, or he was the section leader, and Danny would have been second in command. But he was also the gunner on one of the guns, and he was the best. I mean, fast, and he could get the gun on target, the aiming stakes, and get the gun on target in less than 15 seconds once they gave him the dope, So, but he was a great Marine too, a good friend.
Well, and all the Marines that you and I have talked about in our interviews. They've been phenomenal Marines, every single one. But
Yeah.
it's one of the things that we've talked about before is telling the story of Danny Reisberg in these interviews, and the likes of Mel Newlin and Ron Reyes and the other Marines who gave their lives at Nong Song, is that you continue their legacy, and this legacy continues on because it's now going to be uploaded forever. And
Mhm.
Danny Reisberg's grandkids, assuming he has them, will be able to see this someday and learn about their grandfather that they never got to meet because of you.
Yeah. And there was a Marine there that night. No one really talks about. He unwittingly got stuck fighting in the battle up on the hill. He was a 6 by truck driver. He was in motor transport. He he took the he took the truck up and down the hill with the dead enemy bodies during the day on the 4th, and he was hauling the next day on the 5th. When I left, he was hauling dirt and the sandbags and everything down to throw those things away so they clear everything. And there was a lot of dud ammunition that they had to blow, and so they carried the ammo down the hill about 100 yards so they could blow it all. And nobody told him about it. He was coming down the hill when they blew it. He lost control of his truck, went off the side of the hill, and killed himself. Died in that crash. And I think I found that guy's name. I had a copy of the dead, and I believe that his name was Raymond Hyson.
Yep.
I recognize everybody else, but I don't recognize his name. And I'm wondering if he's the one. I could actually probably go on there and see if he was an H&S company.
Well, it just brings up a point that, before our little break here, it just brings up a point that not everybody that, of course, his name is on the wall would die in combat. You have an unfortunate accident like this of a lack of communication where this Marine should not have died, but he did because
Right,
lack of communication, the wrong place in the wrong time.
right, right.
And it's one of the unfortunate aspects of what happens with military service.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
Mike, if it's okay with you, take a short break real quick because I have to
Yeah.
go do my duty, and we'll pick this back up here in about 20 minutes, okay?
Sounds good, my friend. I'll be here.
Thanks, Mike.
I'm not.
All right, Mike, to kind of pick up where we left off, talking about Nong Song, and you mentioned in previous interviews that certain dates you remember things and certain dates become difficult. So is 3rd and 4th July a difficult time for you each year?
Yes, yes, it is. For the first, I would say I've been back from Vietnam about 56 years now. Um, and for about the first 40, I'd say about 45 to 50 years, I wouldn't, I would not participate in 4th of July. I'd always go into a closet with my headphones on and listen to music because it reminds you too much of that night. I mean, they're from where I stood, I could, as we were moving towards Nong Song, you could hear the small arms machine gun fire. You could hear the B-40 rockets, and of course the mortars and the rockets, um, and it was like the 4th of July, really, when you look at it. Then you've got starburst going out. You've got guys got uh, uh, green star clusters are popping them, letting them know they're coming back to the lines and they're friendlies. And you see all this stuff. And somebody here in our neighborhood, they celebrate everything across the street. And a couple of weeks ago, they were celebrating something. I forgot what day it was. Had something to do with Native American stuff, but they were popping it. And I was in the backyard here with my dog, and it was big stuff. It was going up over our house here, and in times past I would have ran in, but right, just brings me back to that day. Every time I see fireworks, um, you know, my mind just goes right back to it. There's so many of those kinds of dates, but um, more so with Nong Song because there was so much firing, so much um, uh, artillery even was being fired from Anwell, and so yeah, it's difficult for me, but not as bad as it was when I first got home. And when I first got home, I my wife will tell you that when we first met, because I told her when we when we got home, I'm not looking for a girlfriend, I'm not looking for a fiance, and I'm not looking for a wife. And I got both in the next 8 months. But uh, she saw some of it before we got married. I tried to explain to her, how do you explain it to a 18-year-old girl? And I said, I'm not, I'm not right. I mean, I said I saw action in Vietnam, and I lost friends in Vietnam. And certain dates, they bring back those memories, those flashbacks, and the anniversary dates, and you just can't get away from them. I was naive enough to think I could go to war, go home, and then come home and get on with my life, and boy, was I young and stupid. But I think everybody has the exact same problems. I don't think there's anybody alive today that was at Nong Song that night. Don't remember it. I mean, not just on July the 3rd or 4th. I mean, I think about that thing all the time. But no, I just if I can avoid fireworks, I'll avoid them. I got grandkids, and they want their grandpa to go out with them, and so I'll go out. And when I first got here, my wife and I, we we were sitting outside, and my son-in-law says, "Why don't you go out and see?" He knew. And man, the first fireworks that went off on our block, I was out of there. I was there, and I was in my room here, and had headphones on, listening to music. And this year, I did pretty good. I was able to stay out there for a little while, and kind of made my way in. So I'm making progress, but it'll never go away, ever.
Well, and I think that's one of the important things that through our interviews that I hope that people are realizing, because as I've told you, people are watching these, is that the Vietnam War's never left you. It never will be. I mean, it's been a part of your life since the first day that you set in country, and even today, 50 something years later.
Yeah, yeah, and that you look. I mean, in my wildest imaginations, when I saw that 20 people had seen the interview, when it hit 1,000, I said, "My goodness, what's wrong with these people?" And now I think the last time I saw it, it was over 5,000. I mean, I never thought there'd be such an interest in Vietnam War. I mean, certainly no interest in any story I had to tell, but I guess I'm wrong. But um, I'm happy to do it. I was a little apprehensive at first. But my wife, she told me, she says, "You need to do it sometime. You told your story in a book, in a journal, and said you need to tell it to somebody." So when you called, I was more than happy to do it. It's been tough. I've actually enjoyed the time off simply because the the uh, the emotional aspect of it was really starting to build up, and so I was able to just kind of step away from it and just do other things that I wanted to do, and so uh, but it overwhelms. Sometimes it's overwhelming to talk about these things, but I'm a lot better than I was 15 years ago.
Yes, sir.
15 years ago, it was uh, I would come to pieces. I would practically break down for no reason at all. And uh, but I'm not there anymore. You know, I got good help from the VA, and I told you about Joe Griffiths, who worked at the vet center in Lake Worth, Florida. He commanded the 1st Battalion, 5th Marines in 1968, 69, and he was a professional. I mean, he understood, and he was a combat Marine. He was awarded the Vietnamese awarded him their Medal of Honor and their Cross of Gallantry, and he had some other medals as well. They said he was a great battalion commander, and he just knew how to deal with combat stress. I went to vet centers now, and everybody in there, and it's no knock on them, they're not combat veterans, and they don't know how to deal with it when somebody goes in and talks about the things that we talk about. You know, they got stuff. Everything Joe had didn't come out of a book. It came out of experience. And he's a true, he did all the Marines. Any Marine that came into the vet center, he said, I want them. I want every one of them. And so he had a pretty overwhelming schedule. But he also did the Army guys, the corpsmen, anybody that came in. There were 4 of them in there, but he said, I want every Marine that comes in there, every Marine. And you know, we walked on the same ground, we bled on the same ground. And and that's what you need. You need somebody who can understood what you went through. He had some really odd ways of dealing with the post-traumatic stress part of it. I mean, he would make you listen to. Well, he wouldn't make you. He would just tell you. He'd give you a flak jacket and a helmet, give you a weapon, a rifle, sit you in a chair, darken the room, and then turn a what am I a cassette player on, and it would have nothing but live firefights from Vietnam, and he would play them. First time he did that, I jumped up, threw the rifle down, threw the helmet down, took my flak jacket down, threw it down, got up, went out the door, got in the car, and went home. I told my wife, I ain't going back. I said, I'm not there to be reminded of it. He said, you don't need reminding of it. You're reminded of it every day. She said, you need to find somebody who can help you not to be reminded of it every day in a negative way. Learn. He can teach you probably how to think positively towards it. It took me a long time because I didn't see how anything positive could come out of it, but it did. And it took him 5 years before he even put me in the group therapy. And he said, generally, I got him in there in a year, but 5 years. And I didn't want to sit down with my brothers and talk about it. And when I did, I was glad. I went to the group, and I was in that group until I left Florida a few years ago. So it's there's ways that you can. We were able to get help, but nothing anybody does. I had one guy after Joe passed away that tried hypnotizing me. To that grid coordinates I gave you, 748-124. That's there forever, you know. And he tried literally hypnotizing me. He was a combat veteran. He was a captain, and he worked at the vet center. He was a good one, and but he tried hypnotizing me so I wouldn't remember those numbers, and it worked for about an hour until I got home and told my wife. I said, you know what? He hypnotized me, and I don't remember 748-124 anymore. And so it's those numbers have caused severe problems for me. And you know, it's when it comes to numbers, when I do my checkbook, I check it and I recheck it and double check it and triple check it, all because of 6 numbers and but So that's enough of that. Well, that can come later, how that happened. But
Well, and to continue to elaborate on the positivity, it still felt today. I mean, I know that in the school that I teach in, Mike, outside of myself, there's been at least two other teachers that I know of that have showed your interviews to their students, and they've created assignments about it, about understanding
huh?
human emotion or understanding the
Uh-huh.
effects of PTSD. And
Yeah.
you're educating the youth of America, at least in my little high school here, of what war was like and what you went through.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's not like it is on television. I grew up with John Wayne. Actually, I joined the Marine Corps because of John Wayne. I think I told that story. I saw Sansa Iwo Jima and told my dad I was going to be a Marine, and told my mom when I got home I was 8 years old, and I said when I get older I want to be a Marine. There was no war going on then, and seemed to be all right with him. Boy, when I reached high school and I said I'm going to go join the Marine Corps under the delayed enlistment program. I got a lot of pushback from my mom. My dad, not so much. He just wanted me to join the Navy. But um, so, it that that. But that's the way it happened, and it's not like the movies. The guys that get shot and killed, they don't get up and walk away, and you're left with the emotional aspect of it, especially if you're close to them. And everybody in Vietnam was close to somebody, and there were some guys who I knew who were only close to a few people. And when guys came over to replace um, buddies of theirs or something, they absolutely refused to have anything to do with them. But they didn't want friends because they didn't want the emotional part that goes with it. So
Well, I mean, and it takes its toll. I mean, especially for you guys in the Fifth Marines. I mean, throughout 1967, really, and even into
yeah,
'68 with Tet, the Fifth Marines were in the thick of it, and some of the worst, if not the worst, places to be in Vietnam between the
yeah,
Quezon Valley and the Antenna Valley.
yeah. My friend Ron DeFore, um, he was another one of my best buddies. I trained him. He was on me with me the first time when I trained him with ballistic charger, and um, uh, him and I, we've been friends a long time, and then he up and had a heart attack one night. We were planning it. We found each other after so many years. We were planning to do so much, and he was just getting ready to come out and pick up a boat in Florida that he had bought or was buying, and I was going to ride back with the boat to Colorado. He was going to take it back there, and then I was going to go up there, and we were going to fish on the big lake there in Colorado. He's building a brand new log cabin on the lake, and um, one morning on November the 5th, 2005, I get a call from his daughter or from his son, and he said, "Mo," and I said, "Yes," and he said, "This is Jack." I said, "What's up?" And I knew something was wrong. He called me and I said, "What's up?" And he said, Dad died of a massive heart attack last night while he was at the cabin. And Mom just wanted me to call you and let you know. And she said she'll call you later. Um, he married a Korean girl he met on R&R. Her name was Young. She is a lovely girl. And, um, but, you know, I mean, I lost my best friend. I mean, other than him, I didn't communicate that often with a lot of the other guys. I was a part of Echo. I was a part of Echo Company, but I wasn't a part. Also, you know what I mean. When we came back to Anwa, I left them and went back to the 81 Mortar Platoon. I had a different commanding officer when I was when I was back at Anwa, different platoon commanders and different gunnies and everything. But when I was with Echo Company, but I got some. I'm not saying I was totally shut out. I had a group of friends in Echo Company, and I still have those friends. We got together during Good Morning America in 1985. I forgot what anniversary it was or something in Vietnam. I think it 25-year anniversary of the war, I think, in Vietnam. And so they invited a lot of us to come, but only 12 or 13 of us showed up because the other ones their PTSD was so bad they didn't want to come. And we went, and we instant friendship. I mean, as far as I know, they're all still alive except Doc Lansbury. He died a few years ago. But it's tough. I mean, it's tough. You go to war, don't expect to come home and be the same and pick your life up where you left it off. I had a young man who fought in Afghanistan. He was a manned a 50 caliber machine gun on a Humvee. He was my pastor's kid. I raised that kid. It was for the time he was born. Played basketball with him when he was a teenager. Went shooting with him when he, became of age that he could shoot. I gave him my .22 rifle, and he shot the rifling right out of it. I just talked to him the other day about it. He lives up in, he's up in North Dakota. Has a nice farm up there. But he told me the other night, he said, I haven't slept in the same bed with my wife in 5 years. He's a double, like myself, he's a double Bronze Star winner. But he can't sleep with his wife because of the nightmares. And I told him, I said, John, I know how you feel. I've been there. I said, same thing with my wife and I. And I said, but at one time, I grabbed my wife's hair and put a gun to her head. That's pretty heavy right there. And he said, that's why I don't sleep there. I said, do you sleep with a weapon? He said, oh, yeah, always. And I sleep with a weapon still. Not right next to me. And I probably always will. I feel comfortable when it's there. I feel very uncomfortable when it's not. When I went to my PTSD training, Joe, he asked for all my weapons. And I said, you got to be crazy. I'm not giving you my weapons. What does Mike giving you my weapons have to do? Oh, it has a lot to do with saving your life. I've had a dozen Marines sit in that chair and tell me the same thing, that you ain't going to do anything to yourself. And 3 or 4 of them did. So I don't want that to happen to. So I want your weapons. I said, you have to let me think about that, because I've slept with a weapon ever since from day one I got home. And I said, you're going to have to let me think about that. And I went home, told my wife, and I said, he wants all my weapons. And he said, well, think about why, huh? You have suicidal ideation. I mean, I said, but I ain't going to do that. She just kind of looked at me cross-eyed. And so I thought about it, and I went back the next day or my next appointment the next week, and I gave him my Glock 17, my 357 Magnum, my 38 Smith & Wesson, and my Ruger Mini 14. And when I got better, he gave them back to me. When he thought I was well enough to have them, he gave them back to me. And I've given 2 of those guns away. I have the Glock, and I have a Ruger Mini 14 branch rifle. That honestly, I like to shoot. I like to go out in the country and shoot it, and doesn't bother me. I don't think of Vietnam when I'm shooting it. I just like to shoot, and so, but I think people, when they go in the service and they go to war, they should realize, they should try whatever they need to protect themselves, to understand, read books about people who have been there, because every one of them will tell you something that'll help you. And when John was in Afghanistan, or was he in Iraq? No, he was in Afghanistan. And he wrote me just about every day. See, in Vietnam, we couldn't get on a machine and send an email to our parents or anything like that. But I said, when you get to where you're going and you get access to your email, you send it to me every day. So everything he sent me, I kept. I printed it off and put it in a folder. And then when he got home, he was having trouble from the time he got home. And I wrote him a message, and I said, John, I have every letter you wrote me and every letter I wrote you back. I said, I shared a lot of stuff with you about my time in Vietnam. You shared a lot of stuff. I said, do you want these letters? Do you want them back? They're not mine, they're yours. And I would like you to give me permission to destroy them. And he said, no, I want them. So, and I understand that. If somebody would have wanted to destroy my diary, I probably would have killed them. Not literally, but so there's a lot that goes on with when you're in combat, and once you get home and you try to adapt. I couldn't adapt to my first job. Couldn't adapt to college. And fortunately, I got a job I worked at a long time, and I eventually left that job early because of PTSD in 2001. I quit my job, and my wife and I moved to Florida in 2002. And that's where I met Joe. She took me there specifically to see this guy because she had heard about him. And I said, I don't want to move to Florida. Our daughter lived there, the daughter we live with now, her and her husband. And I said, I don't really want to move to Florida. I said, I love California. And my family's here. And says, you need help, honey, and I'm going to take you to Florida. And I'm going with or without you. So I said, well, I'm going with you then. And she's the one that got me she drove me to the vet center, all that, she did all that. And I owe her a lot, and I love her a lot. And she's a great woman. And not for her, I probably wouldn't be well today.
Well, and your wife, phenomenal lady. She's definitely supported you every step of the way and has jumped leaps and bounds to make sure that you get as much help as you can. And you're fortunate in many ways. Not everybody has been fortunate enough to have that that's done military service. And she is a testament to a warrior's wife. I mean, she has stood her ground.
I know many of my buddies that I served with, a couple of them in that photo of the Good Morning America photo, who the wife couldn't stand to live with them anymore because of PTSD. And one woman even said, I don't know why she actually went back to Vietnam with him. Yeah, that photo there. And she went back to Vietnam with her husband. And when he came back, she said, when they came to visit, she said, I had to go to Vietnam. I had to see why this thing called Vietnam has screwed my life up. And I said, screwed your life up. That's what I thought at the time, screwed your life up. What about your husband? He's the one that is screwed up, like both of us are. It was for better or worse. I didn't like the woman from the first time I met her, but I said, it's for better or worse. My wife took those vows, she meant them. And she helped me. And but I understand some women just can't do it. I mean, some women just can't do it. I mean, that's a shame, but I'm better for it. I think I'm a better man for going through all that. I wouldn't change anything. I've never said, I wish I hadn't gone to Vietnam, even though Vietnam is the cause of my going blind. And all the memories that I have there, I'd never swap it for the friendships I made, for the camaraderie I had with Marines in combat. I mean, that's unequal. There's nothing equal to that in my life. Is the camaraderie I had with Marines when we were under combat. People yelling and screaming at each other, and orders being shouted, and people running here, people running there, and that what you're doing is important. When you get hit and those Marines look over at you, and they want fire, but that's got to come from the CO. But when you're done and they tell you thank you, one guy came to visit me, and he told my wife, my kids, he said I wanted to bring my wife and my kids to meet you because I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for you. And I think that had more effect on me than anything. But we all felt that way. Everybody was responsible to other people. Nobody was there were no John Waynes. They were just Marines who were trained the best the Marine Corps could train us in a short amount of time, who adapted to a war in a rice paddy in a jungle, and that they knew nothing about.
Well, and speaking of that adaptability, I mean, that's the heart of the Marine Corps, is adapt and overcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They did on Guadalcanal, they did on Saipan and Iwo Jima, and one of the worst places was where Sledge was.
Okinawa and Peleliu.
Yeah, Okinawa, but also where he was before. He was at Cape Gloucester, but his first one was in Peleliu. And Peleliu was. Sledge always said that Peleliu was the worst of the battles, worse than Okinawa by far. And I watched that series, The Pacific, and I would say both Peleliu and Okinawa were pretty bad. I mean, but he said for him, Peleliu was the worst. But these are what Marines are trained to do. You know, they're called upon. We all went over young. We were all young. We were all inexperienced. I mean, 6 weeks basically of boot camp. The first 2 weeks were getting shots and things like that. Then not even a month of infantry training. And then I went to advanced infantry training for mortars. But none of that prepared me for what I saw in Vietnam. Not the classes about the culture, the geography, the snakes, or anything else. It was those are things that you have to learn on your own, and I'd say just about every one of the Marines did.
Well, that's
my wife. That's my wife. Say hi to Zach. This is my wife,
Zach.
Bonnie.
Hi, nice to meet you, Bonnie.
Nice to meet you. Okay, yeah.
My rock and my fortress.
Love you.
Love you too, sweetie. But so that's one of the highlights of Marine Corps, the ability to adapt. And it's happened in every war. Every war the Marines have ever fought, they've done it.
Absolutely.
Partial to the Marine Corps. It's same in the Army. Same in every service. If you're in combat, you basically the same thing, no matter what you're doing.
Well, and to finish this out today, Mike, I think, that's a phenomenal point to bring up about the United States military is the adaptability of it. But one of the things that I find that's unique, especially among Marines, is the camaraderie after the fact of how well you guys stay connected. I mean, still, guys, you Marines of 2-5 are still connected via Facebook, emails, varieties of things now, and web pages. But I mean, even 25 years after the war, we've got this photograph of you guys getting together for Good Morning America. And I mean, I was going to ask you, who are the guys in the photograph?
I don't have my photograph in front of me, but upper left, excuse me for using my magnifying glass, upper left is Pete Pitcher, Dan Rotar. I can't see who that is. And then there's Joan London, that's Jack Coon in the uniform, then me, then Bob Hoover. He was the radio operator for the skipper. Sitting in the front row is Doc Lansbury, Rick Bohm, and Tom McLaughlin. And who's sitting? That's Roger Redmond and Johnny Kazaza. Well, all great Marines, all squad leaders at one time, platoon sergeants at one time. Some of them decorated, some of them not. All of them great Marines, though.
Well, and it's just even that the fact that you can look at the photographs of this photograph of Good Morning America, or even the photographs in country, and you can pick up instantaneously on the stories about that Marine, the name itself, and it's incredible.
Yeah. Yep. Rick Bohm and Tom McLaughlin, who are sitting next to each other, is an interesting story about them. With an ambush that took place on the day after Tet down at the Troy Bridge, and I'll tell that story when we get to it. And that's where Tom McLaughlin, he's to the right of Rick Bohm, the third one over from the bottom. He had his leg shot off by an AK-47. But it's an interesting story how he survived, and all good guys. Those guys, I mean, I remembered most of them because they basically came in when I got into Echo. A lot of them came in after, so I knew them, and some I met when I was with Echo. And by the time I left Echo Company, there wasn't hardly anybody I knew. I mean, they were all gone in a brand new company. And so, but no, these you have that camaraderie, and you always will.
Well, and that's the thing that strikes me with the Marines that I've talked to from 2-5 is that you're all extraordinary in your own way. Those that were decorated, those that were not. At some point in your service, you went above and beyond the call of duty to do a part of your job, whether an officer saw it or not, whether it was written up or not. You did what you had to do for those around you. And I think that's exemplary in all the Marines that I've talked to, from first Marines to the 4th Marines, 5th Marines, the 7th Marines, and the 27th Marines that I've talked to. You guys are outstanding individuals.
Yeah. And these guys, every one of them could have been decorated, probably should have been decorated, and some of them were. But at some point in time, if you're a grunt, you did something that somebody didn't see, and I didn't do anything except my job. That was it. I just did my job, and they gave me 2 Bronze Stars for it. Why, I still don't know. But it was just my job. I would have done it even if they didn't have medals. But you do what you have to do. You're a forward observer. They expect you to do that job, and when you do it, thank you was sufficient. They don't have to give you a medal. I kind of like the old way the Confederacy did it. They gave medals in the Union Army, but Robert E. Lee had this opinion: every single one of my soldiers are heroes. I'm not going to recognize one above the other. They're all the same. They're all heroes. And but there are some that are, some I don't necessarily agree with that, because there's the Melvin Newlins and the John Basilones and the Chesty Pullers and the George Patton and so many others that did it. Went above and beyond the call of duty. You have a guy that jumps on a grenade, saves your life. I mean, those are a big deal.
Well, and that's the nature of it. I mean, you've got these larger than life figures who were ordinary Marines that do extraordinary things.
Right.
Right. And with that, Mike, you're an example itself. I mean, you're sharing your story with thousands of people because every story matters, and we're fortunate to hear yours. And I'm fortunate to be here recording this again today, Mike.
I met a guy just a couple of weeks ago on Facebook. He was with 2-5. He was Echo 2-5, and he saw my name and everything on there. He looked at my profile, saw my photos. He says, "I know you. You're lucky." And I saw his name, and I didn't quite recognize the name until he told me who he was. He was my skipper's radio operator, and I didn't recognize him. I have a picture of him somewhere, but he said, the second I saw your name, I had to look at your information, because I knew you. He told me this, and then when I saw you, he said lucky, and I got that name from August the 29th. We were on a patrol in the Anwal Valley. We were hooch hunting. or hooch searching and trying to uh, find enemy caches of weapons. And there were two companies out on this patrol, and or they actually was a little off. They just didn't name it. And Captain Kinder and I were standing underneath a hooch that had a window that from the inside pushed up. And underneath that, on the out, it's hard to explain, but there was a clay pot hanging there. And the skipper and I were as close as I am right here to talking to you. And I had my map out and I was pointing, and he was looking at it, and I was looking at doing another recon by fire thing. But we were talking, and all of a sudden the vase above us, the clay pot, exploded, just shattered, and caught Captain Kinder with shrapnel on the side of his face. And I was lucky because I had my helmet on, but no, I didn't have my helmet on, but caught a piece of shards of that stuff. And he said that's when the guys in 2nd Platoon Echo started calling me lucky. And that bullet hit, it was shot at me and by a sniper, and it hit not more than 5 inches above my head. And I didn't move. That was the thing. By the time the bullet shattered it, I literally heard the round. You know how they say you don't hear the one that hits you? Now I understand why. It hit the base, then I heard the shot. It's weird. But I mean, 5 inches. Sometimes I think of that and I get cold chills. But and he just was looking through Facebook and found me, and so we're good friends talking online, and so you just never know who you're going to meet on social media. I've met a couple Marines I served with on social media.
Well,
So,
I mean, that's how you and I met. I messaged you on Facebook.
you got me on Facebook?
Yep, I saw you comment
Oh,
on you commented on one of the interviews I did with General Christmas, and
Oh, yeah.
I just so happened to look in the Way City Facebook page and saw your name in there, and that's where I decided to reach out to. I
Wow.
sent you a message, and here we are.
Yeah. Well, that's, what do they call that? Fate? No. Well, we're here anyways.
Well, Mike, I'm thankful for it, my friend, and
Hi, me too.
as always, Mike, thank you for your service and welcome home.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to seeing you in person.
I'll be there into a week and a half, so
Okay. Sounds good, my friend.
all right.